This is what we know Kamala Harris to be. She's stern, she's tough, and, she's going to come out guns blazing because there's a lot of work to do to secure her nomination as the Democratic presidential nominee.
And Kamala Harris looks almost certain to be the Democrats' nominee for president after an unprecedented surge in donations. More than $230 million has already been donated to her campaign since Joe Biden's withdrawal on Sunday. She has also secured the support of enough Democratic delegates to put her on track for the nomination. Well, Vice President Harris has been speaking overnight in Delaware, and the former prosecutor says she's used to taking on perpetrators of all kinds.
Predators who abused women, fraudsters who ripped off consumers, cheaters who broke the rules for their own gain. So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type. And in this campaign, I will proudly put my record against his.
Well, Kamala Harris says building up the middle class would be at the centre of her presidency, with gun control and reproductive rights among her other priorities. She's also been endorsed by one of the Democrats' most senior figures, the former Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. Molly Ball is Pelosi's biographer and says even though she's no longer a top official in the party, her backing is important.
We have seen her play a very significant role in pushing Joe Biden toward this decision to drop out of the race. And that is because she obviously does have a great deal of respect within the party. She's a very senior figure within the party, having been a leading voice in Congress, having been the speaker twice, having been in politics for as long as Joe Biden has.
Well, Caitlin Hornik is night news editor for The Sun US and joins us live from New York. Good morning, Caitlin.
Good morning.
Have you been surprised by the speed with which the Democrats have rallied behind Kamala Harris?
Well, I think the biggest thing to note here is that they are really on a tight deadline. The Democratic National Convention is slated to convene beginning August 19th in Chicago, which is less than 4 weeks away. But the Democrats must formally nominate a replacement for Joe Biden by August 7th. So the clock is ticking. So it doesn't surprise me at all that there have been so many endorsements for Kamala Harris within the last 24 plus hours.
I mean, by the sounds of it, if reported to be believed, she is already over the line. She's got enough Democratic delegates to put her on track for the nomination. Do you think it is still possible there might be a challenger, there may be another contender who throws their hat into the ring?
Listen, anything's possible, as we have seen in the United States in the last 2 weeks. Never say never. I do think it is unlikely given the fact that as of just after midnight on Tuesday, Kamala Harris does have more than enough delegates to secure the Democratic presidential nomination. That being said, she is not the candidate yet. Again, she has to be formally nominated, and the Rules Committee of the Democratic National Convention will meet at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, and they made that announcement Sunday night. So again, things are moving in the right direction for Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee, but it is not yet confirmed.
Obviously, she's been speaking overnight. We heard a bit of it there. What did you make of her speech? I mean, is it almost an indication of how she will approach the election? Because she definitely sounded like she wants to take the fight to Donald Trump and almost make the election a referendum on Donald Trump.
Absolutely. I think the biggest takeaway from her speech was that she was putting it all on the line and really going toe-to-toe with Trump in terms of her policy versus his, the things she has accomplished, the things he has been accused and convicted of. And she really was going hard about her prosecutor background, which is nothing new. We've seen that from Kamala Harris before, especially in her previous presidential campaign in 2020. So I'm not surprised. And I think the general belief is that this is what we expected. This is what we know Kamala Harris to be. She's stern, she's tough, and she's going to come out guns blazing because there's a lot of work to do to secure her nomination as the Democratic presidential nominee.
I mean,
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, I mean, it will be really interesting when it's the TV debates later this year between Trump and, we assume, Kamala Harris, because, Kamala Harris can be quite an effective debater. I remember when she was running for for the nomination, the Democrats' nomination in 2020. She went up against Joe Biden and took him to task for his previous position on the issue of busing back in the 1970s. So, she is quite effective when she's kind of grilling one of her opponents.
Absolutely. And again, that speaks volumes to her background as a prosecutor. So, it absolutely will be fascinating to watch her and Trump go toe to toe, presumably in these upcoming presidential debates. We know Donald Trump, has a very bold presence, I think you can say, in these debates, and he launches hard and really doesn't hesitate, and he will talk and talk and talk and get his point across. But I do think that Kamala Harris, given her background, is a prime candidate to go up against him and maybe call him out on some of his lies. And I'm sure he'll do the same with her if she presents factual inaccuracies. So again, we are in very unprecedented times here, but we're also looking at a very exciting 105 days, I think now it's down to until the election. So it's going to be really exciting to see what happens next.
I mean, I suppose it is possible. Donald Trump does not need to necessarily agree to debates with Kamala Harris. He could just duck them if he thinks they're not in his interest. But we shall see. How big a hurdle, Caitlin, are her personal ratings, though? Because even though, if you look at the poll, she stands a better chance against Donald Trump than Joe Biden, that's quite a recent development. And that largely is off the back of Biden's disastrous debate performance, a few weeks ago, and his ratings have been tanking ever since. Kamala Harris for years has actually polled worse than Joe Biden and has had quite negative ratings with the American people. Can she turn that around?
I think a lot of that is going to come down to who she chooses as her running mate. I think if she makes a very strategic move to appeal to a lot of moderate and undecided voters, she could win the election, right? Anything is possible at this point. I think it's really interesting, kind of the names that have been floated around so far, including current Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, and North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper. We know that Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer has declined, as have a couple other people. Gavin Newsom, his name has also been tossed out there. But I think, there are a couple names that are kind of floating under the radar, like Mark Kelly, senator from Arizona. I think he could be a really interesting pick for Kamala Harris and for that ticket. So again, I do think it will boil down to who she chooses as her running mate, and the appeal of that person will really factor heavily in the decisions that voters have to make.
Caitlin, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Caitlin Hornik there, night news editor for The Sun US. Brilliant analysis of Kamala Harris, by the way, in The Times this morning and on the app with your digital subscription. And we should say there is a fantastic offer on subscription to The Times at the moment. You can get 50% off your first 3 months of the 7-day print newspaper and the digital edition, so you can enjoy the quality journalism you expect every day of the week. To get the offer, just head to The Times website at times.com or use the app and look for the links to subscribe.